At this point, I'd like to introduce Tom Struckoff. Tom is the director of our TV station, JCTV, and he's going to carry the program from here. Thank you very much.
Hi, how you doing? How you doing this afternoon? Matt Keeney and I, about a year and a half ago, decided that we wanted to do something to recognize some of the area veterans in Jefferson County. A few years ago, Bill Thomas, who worked at the television station then, did basically the same thing with some of the Korean War veterans, and I thought it turned out real well. I thought there was pretty good participation. So Matt, who did a lot of the legwork, called around to some of the area organizations, the veterans organizations, and we came up with 6 individuals from the area to talk about their experiences in Vietnam. You're going to recognize some of the people in here. Howard Wagner is in it. Sheriff Glenn Boyer is in it. And the sheriff is supposed to be here. I don't see him right now. Dorothy Cook is here. She was a nurse in Vietnam. Bernadette Miller is here. She was a nurse in Vietnam also. And Mike Christian was in the Army in that period. He's also here. He works here in the county also. Ron Fowler, I don't see him here, but he's from DeSoto. He is also in the video. So you'll recognize some of the folks in here. We didn't try to do any politicizing with this video at all. We just asked them about their experiences, and I think they were very brave and very gracious to come down here and spend some time with us and discuss something about that period in their lives. I'm 45. I remember the war. I don't remember a lot of it. A lot of you folks remember a lot more than I do. So it was a learning experience for me. Hopefully, it'll be a discussion point for you guys too, and that's basically what we were trying to do. So later on when we're done, we've got Dedrick Lee here. He's on the faculty here at the college. Scott Holzer should be here later on. He's faculty here. So if you have some questions about that period, hopefully they can answer that. I'm not an expert, but I will try to answer some questions about the video itself. And many of you probably know a lot more about it than I do. So if you can discuss it and answer some of these questions amongst yourself, that would be terrific. Also, David Christian is here. He's with the Wall of Honor down here at the courthouse, down at the administration building. He wanted to talk later on. If you want to walk up and talk to him after the show, to talk to him about the Wall of Honor, see if there's some folks that can get on it. He's trying to collect more names for that, so feel free to do that. But with that, we'll just show the video, and it kind of stands for itself. So Roger's going to turn the lights out, and we'll get this going.
Sometimes you have nightmares. Some of these things come back.
He died on the helicopter en route. That was pretty hard to take.
And the even harder part is if you have to pick up one of your buddies and pull them in. That's where it's hard, where they die right there by you. That's hard.
I knew it was serious when they had wire, like cage wire, on the windows of the bus so nobody would lob a hand grenade in at us.
The day I received my orders to go to Vietnam was the day I found out that my best friend, George Hall, who I went to high school with, had been killed in action in Vietnam.
Very proud I'm a Vietnam veteran. Does anyone owe me anything? Absolutely not. Did my duty.
My dad knew people on the draft board. They called him and said, your son's number 22 on the list. We haven't filtered out all the married people above him. So I joined the Army. That was 63, October of 63. And at that time I was 22.
Graduated from DeSoto High School in 1966. The war was going on in Vietnam. Several of them was, my buddies and them were enlisted to keep from being drafted. And I said, no, if you're going to get me, you have to draft me. In 1969, I got my draft notice.
I was 23. A friend of mine told me about somebody else we had gone to nursing school with who joined an Air Force unit at Scott Air Force Base. I joined this associate unit and went to officer basic in the Air Force. I was young and energetic and immortal, and so I did an inter-service transfer from the Air Force Nurse Corps to the Army Nurse Corps on the contingency that I could go to Vietnam. And of course, they didn't have any trouble guaranteeing that for me. They'd sign me up right away.
I turned 18 on May 15th of 1968, graduated from high school on the 22nd of May, which was on a Friday, and the following Monday I was inducted into the United States Air Force. I knew at that time in my life I wasn't college material, wasn't ready for college, wasn't interested in college. The Air Force had offered me an opportunity to learn a skill in aircraft maintenance, and so I enlisted.
I was 17 actually when I graduated from high school in 1964. I went to work for Purcell Tire in DeSoto. Vietnam really started coming on then. I just happened to be with some high school buddies of mine that worked locally also, and we were at this gas station, and the Navy recruiter walked in, and I said, just out of curiosity, what will you offer me if I join the Navy? And he said, much different from the Marines. I'll guarantee you that you're not going to go to Vietnam. You'll be on a ship out in the ocean, and the only way you'll see Vietnam is from a far distance. So I said, that's for me. And they joined the Marines. I joined the Navy. When they got orders to go to Vietnam, and I just couldn't believe it.
In the fall of 1967, I must have been 18 or 19, I think. My friends and I were just sitting around in our dorm room at the School of Nursing we were attending, and one of my friends wanted to go talk to the recruiters in the town to see about the opportunities in military nursing. So we went to talk to the recruiters. As it ended up, I was the only one who went into the military. I really felt like we really didn't want to go down and talk to a recruiter, but once the recruiter got our attention with the stipend that we could receive every month, and I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for myself because I came from a poor family. Once I told my uncles that I was going into the military, they were so proud of me because they had all served in World War II. And I was the only one of my generation to go in the military from our family. So I guess it was kind of like I was following in someone's footsteps.
I decided I wanted to go to flight school. I knew Vietnam was the goal where all the pilots were going, so I more or less volunteered to go to Vietnam to get that aviation experience.
First day of basic training, the instructor told all of us that we ended up in Vietnam, which was kind of a rude awakening for several of the people that had enlisted in the Air Force to get out of the draft and possibly get out of going to Vietnam. But I probably resigned myself that was going to happen eventually anyway. The day I received my orders to go to Vietnam was the day I found out that my best friend, George Hall, who I went to high school with, had been killed in action in Vietnam. So that made me realize right up front that, you know what, this is not a game. This is not an action-adventure comic book. This is the real world. This is the real thing. And people get hurt and people get killed. And that sobered me up quite a bit before I ever went over.
Frankly, I wasn't afraid. I think I was excited to see exactly what I had ahead of me.
It never entered my mind that I would be ever in any danger. Never entered my mind that I could be hurt. Never in a million years. I had no idea, no concept at all. Because obviously the nurse recruiter served her year in Vietnam and she came back and she looked pretty healthy to me. And I didn't know of anyone who actually was injured in Vietnam until I went to Vietnam.
On July 4th, I landed in Tan Son Nhut Air Base in Vietnam.
When we were landing in Saigon at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, usually, you have all the lights on in the plane because it's, especially at night, it's dark and and they're telling you you're going to be landing. Well, they shut off all the lights, and then we took this immediate dive to land.
As soon as you make that approach, you know something's different because they don't make a normal approach. I mean, it's like you're flying straight and level, and then all of a sudden the nose is straight down, and then all of a sudden you're on the runway, and it's just not a normal approach. They call it a combat approach.
It was pretty scary. And the pilot came over the intercom and said that was to prevent us from being hit by anybody who was watching to see us. And, in some way we thought, oh, he's just pulling a joke. He's just doing it, just pulling a prank on us.
As soon as you got off the aircraft, the first thing that hit you was the heat, and then the smell, and then the realization that, hey, Toto, this isn't Kansas. And you got down to the bottom of the aircraft.
They had these buses lined up, and if you, whatever branch service you were in, you got on this bus.
I knew it was serious when they had wire, like cage wire, on the windows of the bus.
So I asked, what's this for? That's for grenades, so that the grenades could not come in the windows. Okay.
And on your way to the repo depot, you see the bunkers, and you see the machine gun emplacements, and you see the mortar pits, and you see all of the things that are used in war. And it makes you realize up close and personal that, this ain't a friendly place.
I went to the supply depot. There were 3 Marines, I'll never forget it. And they issued me all my jungle fatigue. I had, a helmet. Again, I'm in the Navy. I had a helmet, greens, canteen, web belts, ammo belt, you name it. And I got down at the very end, and this Marine gave me an M14. And read the serial number off, and blah, blah, blah. So I was doing that, and I said, I want to ask you something. Shouldn't you be getting this rifle, and I be issuing it since, I'm in the Navy and you're in the Marine Corps? He laughed.
Well, the first day I got there, they said, you're replacing a nurse who was injured. And I said, oh? They had come, the VC had come and blown up our hot water heater in our nurses' quarters. And she happened to be in the bathroom. And she had facial injuries and a concussion, and she was being medevaced to a different hospital on the coast, and I was her replacement.
And they flew me up to An Khe, South Vietnam. That was where my home base was. I was attached with the 4th Infantry Division. My first outing in An Khe was Charlie was trying to get through the wire one night. They hadn't issued us no weapons or nothing. We were sitting in a hoot chair with nothing but throw a pillow at him. I was scared. I was scared to death.
I remember the first night when I went into the Quonset hut, our intensive care unit. There were 2 little Vietnamese kids with their heads all wrapped up, and next to them was a GI who was badly wounded. Turns out that these 2 little kids had set the the explosive that injured this GI. So it's kind of a little bit of a reality shock. You know, and you have to examine your own ethics. Am I comfortable giving the quality of care that I would give to an American, to quote the enemy?
It was lonely, it was scary. Probably the loneliest I was the entire time I was over there was the first week I was there and the last week before I came home. First week you went over, you didn't know anybody. Everything was strange, everything was new. I mean, it had a twinge of excitement to it, but at the same time, you were by yourself. Everything felt unfriendly to you.
Once I was out and with Special Forces and learned the lifestyle, which after, like I say, 3 weeks, you're really apprehensive. Matter of fact, let's face it, you're a little on the afraid part. You're scared, but you know, you're not, you know, like it's total fright. You know, you just not coming out of this. You're got a one-way ticket, and you had to live that way.
The second night I was there, because I didn't stand guard, I didn't do anything because I was a newbie. We got mortared. This friend of mine, still a friend, lives in Pennsylvania, was there. Ran out of the hooch. He took me with him. Incoming was coming in. He helped me because I didn't know what the world I was doing. We laid on the ground till after it was over, and we couldn't get to the bunker because I wouldn't get up. There were some incoming tracers coming through there. I didn't want to get killed.
So during the day we pulled road security, and then at nighttime we would go back to an LZ, normally around a bridge, and pull security on that bridge to keep Charlie from coming in and blowing the bridge up. Well, then we'd go outside the perimeter of that bridge and set up ambushes. We go out there, we set up claymores. There may be 4, 5, 6 of us. If you could sleep, you could sleep. We set the claymores up out in the perimeter, so if Charlie was coming in, we'd hear him. Click the claymores, we take them out. If we do, sometimes at nights we never got nobody. Other times we get 2 or 3, 1 or 2. Bag them, bring them in for body count.
I had to recover 3 Special Forces bodies that the enemy ran off. I mean, our own people ran off and left, our advisors. And 60 of them came back. They had 60 different stories, but the interpreter and the 2 SF sergeants, they didn't come back, and that was pretty terrible.
I was in the rear with the gear. I can remember C-130s loaded, 6 high, 3 across, from front to rear with caskets, with body bags. And not just one, but one right after another. And it made me feel, to a certain extent, you're one of the lucky ones. You don't have to face that each day that you're here.
I was a seaman, no rating, no nothing. I stood security. It was scary because when you patrolled through there, you walked right by the fence, and some places were 2 or 3 feet where you had to scoot in to make sure there was not any holes cut in the wire, that they didn't sneak in there. And one night I was, in particular, I'll never forget it, I was walking security, and I crossed under this, it was a lumber pile, and you had to walk under this lumber pile to get to the other side. And when I got under the lumber pile, I looked up, and I looked right in the guy's face on the other side of the fence. How come I didn't shoot him? I have no idea. No idea. But it scared the heck out of me. He ran, I ran. Then later on, as I matured, if you will, there, I went on river patrol duty. They were fiberglass boats. There were 4 of us in a boat. Didn't know squat about it, but I was a forward gunner on a 50 cal. Went down the river. We would stop sampans to Vietnamese boats to see if they're carrying concrete, weapons, anything that would aid the VC, Viet Cong.
It's one of the saddest things I had to do. I had to take a son in to pick his dad's body up, and that was at Dock Toe. And the dad was an E8, a master sergeant, and the son was a sergeant first class, 1 grade behind. But that was sort of sad.
We were the first people they saw when they woke up. And it could be pretty sad sometimes because some of them just didn't wake up to very good news.
I can't imagine being a scared 18, 19-year-old kid halfway around the world, no doubt having been drafted, to wake up in a damp, humid Quonset hut and find out you were missing a leg.
I remember one fella that we got in, he didn't even go through surgery because there wasn't anything that could be done for him. They brought him into our ward. He had been, it was a blast injury, so it was like what they call today a traumatic brain injury. And he had had his neck broken, and there was no way to save him. And so I was just assigned to stand there with him and talk with him and try and ease his mind. And then when they got ready to evacuate him to the 67th evac, which had capabilities of a neurosurgeon, he died on the helicopter en route. That was pretty hard to take.
You're their mom, their sister. I like to think that the advice I gave people, those young guys, and the talking discussions I had with them, sometimes just one way, which is a one-way conversation, registered with them. Because it was the first message that they got after they'd lost a limb, for example, and about how the need to go on, and you'll be going home. Frankly, though, I'm amazed how tough those guys were. You know, I didn't see, I'm sure they had to have been scared. They had to have been depressed. But those young grunts, they were some really stand-up guys.
One night, I was on duty and there was some attack around the base camp. Somebody was attacked, and some unit, and one of the soldiers was shot in the heart. And as you can imagine, that's a very severe injury. And because he was so close to the hospital, you know, within 10 minutes away, they got him into the operating room right away and were able to operate on him. Brought him into our recovery room, our post-op ward. He had 4 IVs going, 1 in each arm, 1 in each leg. And we were having to put blood through him. We had to pump it in through a blood warmer. And they didn't think he was going to make it. So we worked on him all night long. Finally got to sit down and look at his chart. Lo and behold, this guy was from a town 5 miles from my hometown. That really hit home.
When they gave immunization shots to some of these people, you probably want to edit this. The Viet Cong came in and they cut their arms off. and they were really horrendous. And when you say, see, there's some underlying stuff, women or whoever. These people weren't very nice, and you can't be very nice dealing with them. You have to be in their ballpark. See, I can't understand how you can be inhumane to another person the way they were, to sever an arm, behead somebody. This type of mentality, I just, I wasn't prepared.
This is the hardest part of it all. The VC used children as decoys and as people to plant what is being called IEDs today. We used to call satchel charges, and they'd use children to plant them.
I remember I took care of, this was in the ICU, an NVA, North Vietnamese Army Irregular, as they were called. They were not Viet Cong, they were North Vietnamese. He was an officer. And I took care of him in the ICU. I can honestly say I gave him what the law refers to as standard of care treatment. And I remember he just hollered and screamed at me all night.
We didn't like having them, but we treated them as well as we treated our own people. I mean, we certainly would not give them the medical. We always made sure they had the medical care they needed.
I didn't have any angst. Maybe I should have. And God knows they were capable of doing some god-awful things, but I don't believe that Americans are all altar boys either. War doesn't bring out the best in people. And I think Americans, Vietnamese, North Vietnamese, Viet Cong, do horrible things during wars. And I imagine there's plenty of blame to go around.
We got back in to the Bridge 30, and I traded a guy a hot 6-pack of beer for the first guard, which was from 10 o'clock at night till 11. Went and took a shower under a 55-gallon barrel, non-potable water, warm, been sat out in the sun, put some fresh fatigues on, and I just kind of milled around, got something to eat, laid around, rested till 10 o'clock. Well, now I wasn't on my own APC, so I borrowed somebody else's flak jacket. So I got down on this other APC with this friend of mine named Sal Duran, and we were sitting there. He was getting short. He only had 30 days in the country that he got to go back to the world. So about 10:55, we started getting incoming. They're throwing mortars in on us and RPGs and B-40 rockets. And I jumped inside, found the flak jacket, put that on. I was trying to put my helmet on because it was somebody else's track and then their helmet. As I was putting that on, Sal had jumped up and jacked a M60 machine gun. Mine was over here. So simultaneously, as he did that, I jumped up to get mine. RPG hit his armor shield. It totally decapitated him, and I got the rest of it all through here. I was pissed because they killed Sal and they wounded me. I was pissed, but I was scared too. The whole time you're thinking back home. You got your parents, you're thinking about your brothers, your wife, all at home. This can't happen to me. Can't happen. So it took me down. I laid there for a minute. I seen Sal was gone. So I got back up on 60, and a couple of those guys was trying to come through the Constantina wire, so I cut them in half, and then I fell back down, and I started then trying to call my own medevac in, and tried to call the artillery in. I was all messed up. So finally my CO come over, he's E7, his last name was Robinson, and he said, "Soldier, sit down there." So the medic come in. He was all bummed out on the dope and stuff, and he was trying to wrap my head up because I was bleeding. And I said, "You get the F out of here." So I bandaged myself up, and finally they come in. They sat there with me, and the medevac helicopter come in, and they picked me and Sal up. Yeah, all I know is cold. I lost so much blood I was cold, and Sal was laying here on a board strapped in. I knew he was already gone, so I kept scooting up between the pilot and the co-pilot, and the co-pilot took his jacket off and gave it to me and put it around me, and I was up right side by side with them, because both sides of the chopper is open, so you're up, I don't know how high, but you got all that air and wind coming in. But they did put a coat on me until we landed at the hospital, and that's where they did the operation on me. I lost my right eye, and I had numerous shrapnel wounds, which I still had embedded shrapnel in me. And from there, I guess I was there a couple weeks, and then they started filtering me back towards Japan and then on back home.
I was there for Tet. That's when the mass Vietnamese tried to pull off various cities, and that just right down the way from the base camp I was at, they killed everyone there. Not us, of course. We took a few mortar rounds, and that was basically it, what happened to us. There, during Tet Offensive, we had 2 boats that were destroyed, that were blown up there. Lost some friends. Very terrible tragedy that happened to them. But out of 75 people that were stationed with me, counting me as 75, there were only four guys that were killed. One knew very well.
My best friend was shot down. He was killed a week before he was supposed to come home. And when I heard it, it just, you know, he was a very special person. And it was really hard for me to lose a friend like that. We just, a kindredship. You know, that's another part of the war. And I said I didn't want to be like Blue. I got shot down with 2. I had 4 weeks to go. And I got shot down the second time, and I said, no, time out. I said, I want to go on R&R. So they gave me an R&R. I went to Bangkok. 5 days. Came back. 3 days later, I got shot down again. And here again, it was just tail rotors. One was the gearbox, and the other I just had a high freak, and it was just a bad situation. I had to get it on the ground, or something bad was going to happen. So.
We all were homesick. We were kids. The only time it ever bothered me, I think, was in October in 1967, and I was doing. I can't remember. I mean, I can really see the evening, and the smell came in the air, and it reminded me of the football field. You know, and I said, yeah, at that time, maybe what? Boy, wish I were home. Wish I were at that football game, because I know they're playing in DeSoto.
Mail call was the biggest thing, the enjoyment there was. You may get mail once a week or once every 2 weeks, but you may get 5, 6, 7, 8 letters, and just to sit down and read them. It was very, very rewarding. It made you feel very good.
My parents wrote me letters every day, my wife, my grandparents, that sort of thing. Otherwise, I didn't have any other communications whatsoever. None of us did. They'd send a newspaper home. My newspapers came from home, from Jefferson County, DeSoto. DeSoto Republic was the name. It was told about Mom and Pop, what they did, what they bought at the grocery store, and what kind of cars they had. You know, just kind of local news. Yeah, didn't ever say too much, you know, about us, and you know, about the war.
I do know that my friends wrote to me, because I got some photos of someone's wedding, but after you've been there for a while, you tend to not care about things that are going on back there in the world, because where you are is more important than the frivolities of everyday life in the U.S. It's kind of the attitude we had. It was much more important for us to take care of those guys than anything else.
It was like Christmas. It was just, everybody was joyful, and everybody just couldn't do it up. And I just sort of stood back, like, guys, we're back now.
I got orders to come back to the United States. Packed all my clothes. Couldn't wait. Anxiety, I guess. Man, I was anxious.
I don't remember if my supervisor, Major Hackman was her name, I think, came down and said, you got orders, you're going home. And it was kind of a matter of fact. I was going to go home. The day I left, I said, I'm trying to think, I might have known for a couple of weeks that I was going home. Gave away a lot of my belongings, flew home. My mother and dad met me at the airport. My dad saw me getting off when I walked up to him, and he is a St. Louis policeman, police detective, kind of a, not a rough guy, but with all that a city policeman would be. But I could tell he kind of choked back some tears.
I hadn't told my wife that I was coming back, so I went to the apartment. It was probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and knocked on the door. I was in a short sleeve shirt. It was snowing outside, and I remember she pulled the curtain back, opened up the curtain, and looked out, and she closed the curtain real quick. I didn't hear the door unlock, so I knocked again. I said, "Sue, open the door. I'm cold. Let me in." She opened up the door, and she let out a big scream. She said, "Is that you?" And I said, "Yeah, it's me. Open the door. Let me in. I'm cold." And she closed the curtain again. I still didn't hear the door unlock. And I had to knock a third time for her to open up the door, or open up the curtain, and then realize, yeah, who it was. It was actually me, and opened up the door, and had a pretty good reunion there.
So I flew home, and I was just so glad to be home. Just so glad. I was just relieved to be home. I was just so glad to be home.
They sent me to Japan for further rehab and got my orders. And I was probably in Japan 2 weeks. And then they sent me back to Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Denver, Colorado. And from there, I was discharged. My wife and a couple of her girlfriends drove out to Denver to pick me up. And then they gave me a 2-week leave, and we drove back to Missouri. And I had breakfast. I guess we left on an early Saturday morning and drove all night. And I ended up in my parents' home Sunday morning and had breakfast with them. And there was a lot of napkins and a lot of tears.
Sometimes you have nightmares. Some of these things come back. My wife's often said, she hears me barking out orders.
It's only been since 1994 that I would even tell anybody that I had served in Vietnam. And it's only because of the way Vietnam vets were thought of.
The most ashamed I've been of our country is what they did to the returning Vietnam veterans. The proudest I've been of our country is what they've done for the Gulf War veterans. When I came back, I can remember going into LAX, and they had big trash cans, 55-gallon drum trash cans, and returning guys that were getting out would take their uniforms off and throw them in a trash can because they didn't want to wear them outside because somebody would throw a tomato at them or call them vile names or whatever.
I don't have any nightmares. I don't dwell. Very proud of a Vietnam veteran. And I don't know if you've asked the question, but I'll tell you, does anyone owe me anything? Absolutely not. In my duty.
We look back now and we realize the terrible mistakes we made about Vietnam. 2020 hindsight, we now know that the domino theory was, no, we didn't know that then, that the domino theory didn't hold water. But those guys who were killed and maimed over there are still killed and maimed. You know, you can't undo the damage. So I'd like to start looking at peace as an option.
I feel fortunate that I'm alive. I'm glad that I served. They called me to do a job. I did my job the best of my ability. I did get wounded. I did make it home. I did not have to pay the ultimate sacrifice. Other ones did. And I'm just fortunate that the good Lord was looking over me and brought me back home. Even though I'm not 100%, I'm back here. You go to the VA hospital, you see people up there in a lot worse shape than what I am. But we're all home.
Thank you. I just want to let you know that was a very learning experience for me. Excuse me. I get a little emotional when I'm watching the people that were in this, watch this video. Excuse me. It was very brave of them to come down and trust me with their stories. And I hope I did it respectfully. Excuse me, I don't normally do this. I'm usually a little more active than this. But anyway, if there are any questions about the video itself, I will try to answer them. I am not a Vietnam expert by any means. I have Scott Holzer here, who is a history professor here, and Dedrick Lee is here also. So if there's some questions that I can answer, I will. If there's some questions that they can answer, feel free. But other than that, the program is basically over. So Dr. Watts can come on up.
Great job to Tom and his staff. Freedom is not free. Will all the veterans here please stand? All the veterans. How about applause? And a special thanks to all those in the video. I know that Bernadette came all the way from Springfield to be here today. Bernadette, raise your hand over there. We have a couple minutes. I was in Vietnam also for a year with the 101st Airborne Division. When I got out of high school, when I was 17 when I graduated, that was in, I guess, June of '64. In Maryland, and I went down the Maryland Eastern Shore and was a beach bum for the summer. That was the thing to do. And I came back around Labor Day, and all the fun and games were over there in Ocean City, Maryland, as a beach bum. And I realized I didn't have any money, didn't have any goals, didn't know what I was going to do. So I went to the pool hall, nice place to spend time, and my buddy came in, my best buddy, and he was panicked, and he was white as a ghost, and I said, Mike, what's wrong? He said, I just wrecked Dennis. Dennis is his older brother, had wrestled in had wrestled in college. He said, I just wrecked Dennis's car. I said, oh no, you know what he's going to do to you, don't you? He said, yeah. I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going down to join the Marines. I said, well, let me finish this game and I'll go with you. Now, you should know that my decision-making skills have improved since then as your president. So, we got down to the Marine recruiter, and there was this out to lunch sign. So we went next door and joined the Army. In the video, someone, I don't know who it was, I think it was Mike, was talking about guard duty. I'll tell you a little story about it. When you were in search and destroy missions, you went in the Central Highlands. It was very difficult to keep a watch that ran properly, so they were very precious. So when we pulled guard duty, we go on a search and destroy mission all day long, and then in the evening we'd stop and we'd set up a perimeter around us, and there were probably most of the time there were 3 people in each spot, setting up the perimeter. So the first guy would be on from 6 to 8. It was two on and 4 off, 2 hours on and 4 hours off. So the first guy would be pulling guard duty, say from 6 to 8, and about 8, so he'd have a watch, and then about 7:30 he'd set the watch up to 8 o'clock, and they'd tap the next guy. Okay, it's time to get up. Now when it's 7:30, but he thinks it's 8 o'clock. Okay, now everybody did this. So guess what the next guy did? He set it up again. So the poor guy that was supposed to be there from 2 to 4 o'clock and still get a couple hours sleep when he was awakened at 4, was waiting for the sun to come up, and it never came up. And he'd be pulling from 2 o'clock until like 6 in the morning. And everybody did it to everybody else. It was just the way it was. Can you relate to that? Okay. Yep. Anyway, I could tell you a lot of funny stories, but I could probably tell you a lot of other stories too. But we'll let that rest. I want to thank you very much for coming. We have next month we have a really neat presentation by one of our biology professors, and it's called Going Green. So it's a Go Green kind of presentation. She will discuss some environmental issues and concerns, as well as ways to save money and help save the environment at the same time. Again, thank you very much for coming. Hope to see you next month.